Today's daf we're going to be learning is Nedarim daf Kaf Dalet. Today's daf is sponsored by Silke Goldberg in loving memory of her mother, Leonie Kimmel, on her third yahrzeit. She was a fantastic teacher and strong believer in learning and equality for women. And we're going to get started with our question that we ended with yesterday. If you remember, we had a Mishna with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. You didn't read yet about who Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov was. You can read in flashback, although you might come out confused as to which Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov this was, as there were two of them. Anyway, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov in our Mishna says, if you want to try to convince someone to eat by you, and in doing that, you say, I'm vowing that you're going to be forbidden to ever benefit from me if you don't come to dinner tonight, and if you don't come eat in my house, that, he says, is basically a neder zeruzin. Again, it was the way we read the Mishnah, even though it wasn't the simple reading of the Mishnah. That's what we call a neder zeruzin. It's no different than bargaining, right? Even though it is different, but in terms of the law, according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that's called a neder zeruzin, where you're just trying to convince someone to eat at your house. You don't really mean it as a neder. If you remember in the Ram, we distinguished yesterday between that case and another case we saw, because we said that it's not something that's so important to a person. Yeah, obviously enough that they used the language of a neder, but they didn't really mean it. I was just trying to convince you to eat in my house for dinner. It's not the biggest deal that I would really make a neder for it, and therefore, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov doesn't view this as a neder at all. The big question is, we ended with yesterday, they asked, Plige Rabbanan Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov olo. Number one, do the rabbis argue with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov or not? Does everybody agree that this is neder zeruzin? Or maybe some people think it's actually really a neder. You said it in the language of a neder. Maybe this is an issue that people would be serious and really make vows about. And if you do say that they disagree, then do we hold like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov or not? So what we're going to do is we're going to answer both those questions today. In order to answer the first question, we're going to bring 4 different sources, 3 from Mishnayot, 1 from a braita. The first 3 sources, we're going to try to infer from them. And if you look at the chart on the study guide, you'll see there's 3 sources. There's 4. We'll get to the 4th in a minute, but there's 3 sources. Each time they infer from the source the same thing, which is, in this case, it's not a neder, but it would make it imply that it would be a neder were something not true, which we'll see. It depends on each source, which sounds like they're assuming this case is just like the case of come eat in my house, like we've been talking about. And yet we see it could theoretically be a vow, which means that somebody must disagree with the rabbis. With Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and therefore we're assuming the rabbis disagree with him, because these sources seem to indicate that some case that's similar to our case is a vow. And Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said it's not a vow. Each time the Gemara is going to say, for the first 3, no. These cases are different from our Mishnah. Not the same kind of case, and they're going to explain how we can distinguish between this case and our Mishnah, why this case, theoretically, maybe even Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov would say it's a vow, and maybe that source goes according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, but wouldn't necessarily say that in our case. The 4th source is going to actually be a solid proof, and you'll see why it's going to be a little different than the other sources. That's going to be a braita that actually refers to our Mishnah, or sort of seems to. Anyway, we'll get to the 4th source when we get to it. And then in terms of once they're going to then prove the rabbis do disagree with him. And then we're going to bring 2 amoraim who clearly hold like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. That's going to be a much simpler part, because it's just going to say we hold like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov even though the rabbis disagree. Okay, that's the first part of today's stuff. Then we'll get to the next Mishnah with the second type. Remember, we're talking about 4 types of vows that are not vows. So the first is the neder zeruzin, which is you're just trying to push someone to do something, whether it was bargaining in the shuk, right? Well, I won't budge from this price, I won't budge from that price. Or now, according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, also saying, I'm vowing against you if you don't eat in my house. So comes the Gemara and starts with the last 4 words of Kaf Gimel Amud Bet, Tashma, our first source. Ditna, says in the Mishnah, also on Samach Gimel, we keep referring to Mishnah around those dapim. Ha'omer lechavero, if you say to your friend, Konan she'eni nehenelach, again, I'm vowing that you will not benefit from me, same idea as before. Im I ata notel libincha kol shel chitim v'shtei chavayot shel yad. Basically, I'm trying to give you a gift. It's not much different than eat in my house, okay? If you don't accept this gift of a core a certain amount of wheat or 2 barrels of wine for your son. If you don't accept this gift, I am forbidding you to benefit from me forever, or who knows what. Okay, so that sounds very similar. I'm basically trying to convince you to take something from me, and instead of coming to a meal, I'm trying to give you a gift. Now the Mishna continues and says, there's a way out of this neder without going to a chacham to undo the vow. What is that? If you say to me, Klum amalta ela b'shvil chvodi, zeu chvodi. If you say to me, why are you trying to give me this gift? You're trying to give me this gift because you want me to look respectful in the eyes of other people. You want it to be, you can go around saying, wow, Michelle gave me a gift. Look, I'm an important person. Well, guess what? For me, you tell me, it's more impressive if I don't accept this gift from you. And then that is a way that it shows how respected I am. Because not only did you try to give me a gift, but I decided not to even accept the gift, right? We know, those who hate gifts will live longer, and it's more respectful. And in the end, why are you trying to give me this gift? You want to give me this gift because you want people to respect me. So it's more respectful for me if I don't accept the gift. That's what you tell me. Now, if you say that, basically, it's the same as accepting the gift, basically. That's why you don't even need lahatir neder. You basically fulfilled the vow, because the whole point of the vow was not that you actually physically take the gift. The point of the vow is that you take the gift so that I really want you to look respected in the eyes of people. And you tell me, well, I already am by the fact that I'm rejecting your gift. So it's kind of like a kiyum haneder. The neder actually was fulfilled, and therefore you're not forbidden to my stuff. Now, what does the Gemara want to do with this? That was the Mishna. Tama, now this only works if you say it's more respectful for me not to accept the gift. Halapachi, what if you didn't say that? Sounds like from the Mishna, nederhu. It would be a neder, and if you don't accept the gift, you're not going to be able to benefit from me ever. Now, mane, again, assuming this is just the same, I'm trying to give you a gift, I'm trying to get you to eat in my house. Sounds the same. Mane, now who does this go according to? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, nidre zeruzin. Right? If this is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, then he would say, this is a nidre zeruzin. I'm just trying to convince you to get the gift. So I just said it, but I didn't really mean it. Okay? That's a nidre zeruzin. So first proof, from here you can infer only if you said zeu kvodi is there not going to be a neder anymore. But if you didn't, it sounds like there's a neder. And if there's a neder, that would go against Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So it must be, this is the rabbi's position, who disagreed with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. To which the Gemara, as I already told you, the Gemara is going to say, no, comparing apples and oranges. Lo olam Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. You could explain this source as fitting in with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Umodeh Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, havai din neder havai. When I'm trying to invite you to your house, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, well, that's a neder. Zeruzin, that's not valid. But because you didn't really mean the neder part. But in this case, I really meant it. Why? Now, the Ravina explains here that there's missing a detail here, which is an important detail, which is the assumption is that I've done something that you've done something for me. Okay? And the reason I'm insistent that you accept this gift is because you've already done something for me, and I want to give you something back. I don't know. I have friends that you sometimes get into these things, right? They pay for something, you try to pay the next time, and they insist that you don't pay, and you get into this whole fight about it. Anyway, the point is that if that's the case, that you've done something for me, and now I'm insisting you take this gift back, the amalei, I can say to you, I'm serious about this neder, and I really mean it seriously. Why? Lo kal ba'ana, and I have to remember what dogs are in the time of the Gemara. They're not like dogs nowadays. But the way they viewed dogs was that dogs were like stray dogs who had no connection, didn't do anything for humans at all. I'm not like a dog. I'm not like a dog that basically just feeds off of other people but doesn't give back to people. In other words, I've done something, you've done something for me, I have to give back to you, because otherwise I'm going to look like a dog that it's just one-sided. And I don't want to be the person who people say, oh, look, she just takes and takes and takes and doesn't give. And because of that, I'm actually serious about my neder. This is not like I'm inviting you for a meal. That's not assumed to be a tit for tat. This is possibly a tit for tat, in which case we can explain that Mishna according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. He would even say in that case that I mean it as a real vow. You better take my gift, and if you don't, I'm going to stop you from benefiting from me, because otherwise it's going to make me look bad. Hashma. Ha'omer lechavero, konam she'ata nehenet li, im hi ata noten lebini kor shel chitim v'shtei chaviyot shel yad. This is the continuation of that Mishna, but it's an opposite case. I say to you, you will not benefit from me if you don't give my son, this is the opposite, okay, a kor of chitim v'shtei chaviyot shel yad. Instead of insisting that you take a gift for your son, I'm insisting that you give a gift to my son. Now, again, the commentaries explain, it must be that my son is a son who eats at my table, and I'm responsible for the son financially. And what I'm saying is I'm insisting that you help me out with feeding my son, okay? It's something that you're basically doing instead of me. That's the important part here. So Rabbi Meir, it's the important part later on. Rabbi Meir omer ad shite. So Rabbi Meir says, as long as you haven't given that gift yet, you haven't given my son wine or the grains, then from every moment until you give, you're forbidden to benefit from me. The neder kicks in right away. Chachamim omrim, just like the previous case, which is why they're in the Mishnah together, this one can also be undone very easily, even without going to a chacham. This is why I said you had to explain it before. Again, all these cases, there's something a little bit missing that you have to fill in the detail. It's that my son was eating at my table. Now, I can undo this neder myself. How can I undo the neder myself? If I say, you know what, I don't need this anymore. In other words, let's say, didn't have enough money to support my son. So I said, please give my son some money, some food, because I can't afford it. And then I won the lottery, or someone gave me a gift, and I just didn't need it anymore. So I could say the whole point of this vow was what? The point of the vow was because I needed food for my son. But now I've got it, so I don't need it anymore. So I can dissolve the neder very easily by just saying, it's as if you gave it to me, because I don't need it anymore. So now, again, what can we infer from here? Tamad amar hareini ki'ilu hitkabalti. The only way it works to undo this vow is if I say, it's as if I already have what I need, right? And it's as if you already gave me, because I have what I need. But halav hachi, but if I didn't say that, it's obvious from this Mishnah that what? It's a hachi nederu, it's a neder. Now why? It's really also a nidre zeruzin. I want to convince you to do something. So I make a vow, but I'm just really trying to convince you to do it. It's not really like I meant the vow according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. It's like the food case, like the come eat in my house case. So Mane, who is this according to? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, nidre zeruzin havi. If you say Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov that this is his opinion, it can't be. He would call this nidre zeruzin. And lav Rabbanan uplike. So it must be, it's the rabbi's position. It must be they disagree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. To which, again, just like in the previous, the Gemara says, look, we're rejecting the suggestion. La'olam Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Really, it's Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, this source. Umode Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, havai de neder havai. And he agrees that in this case, it really is a neder. Why? Mishum da'amar le, lav malka ana de mahanina lak va'at lo mahanit li. Now, again, you have to assume that there was a tit for tat going on, and that not only was my son eating at my table, which was the first assumption that we added here, but also that I've been giving things to you. And basically, I've fed you other times. And basically, I can say to you, listen, I'm not like a king where you come and sit at the king's table and the king doesn't expect you to invite him back to his house, or he gave you a gift. He doesn't expect to get a gift in return. Maybe some kings do. But basically, right, the idea that a king is very wealthy, has a lot, and can just give without taking. But, right, this is the reverse of the previous, of the dog, right? The dog just takes and doesn't give. The king gives and doesn't take. I'm not like that. I gave you and I need it back. So therefore, that I really meant as a neder, because I don't want, right? I need the money basically. And this is a serious neder. It's not like just, I want you to eat in my house, which, okay, what's the difference whether you eat in my house, you don't eat in my house? It's not something so serious that I would take a vow about. This is serious. I've given you things. I need things in return, right? I've spent money on you. I need to get the money back. So therefore, that's why this would be a neder, even according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Third source. Amalei Mar Kashisha bereit Rav Chisda leRav Ashi Tashma. Mar Kashisha, the son of Rav Chisda, tells Rav Ashi, I have a source to try to get to this answer. Tashma. This is a Mishna further on. We'll see it on Daf Kaf Zayin. Is when we get to I think it's the last category, the Nidrei Onsim, the last category of the 4 Nedarim of our Perek. Nidrei Onsim. What's the case? Hidiro chavero sheyochal etzlo, v'chalahu o chala beno o sheikvo nahal. What's a Nidrei Onsim? I say exactly our case of our Mishnah, which is, right, that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov talked about. You are going to eat in my house, and if you don't eat in my house, everything will be forbidden to you. And then what happened? You got sick. Okay, I said, right, you're eating in my house this Shabbat. If you don't eat in my house, all my fruits will be forbidden to you, or all my property, whatever I said. And then what happened? You got sick on Shabbat and you couldn't come. Or chala beno, or your son got sick and you couldn't come. Or there was a huge storm and the river was so high you couldn't get across the river. Now, what do you see here? Halav hachi nederhu. Were it not for the onus, right? That's what onus is. It was circumstances beyond your control. Were it not for the circumstances beyond your control, it would have been a neder. That's obviously implied from this Mishnah. This seems clearly the same case, right? It's a case of an invitation to eat, and yet we call it a neder. Only if you get stuck and something happens beyond your something unexpected, do we say it wasn't right. The vow doesn't kick in. But if that didn't happen and your son wasn't sick or you didn't get sick and you could have come and you didn't show up, it would be a vow. So again, Mane, who does this go? According to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, zeruzin havai. It's just a nidre zeruzin to get you to come eat in my house. We already said that's not something, right? That is not the kind of neder that we would call a neder. In which they say, right, elalav Rabbanan, it must be the rabbis, uplige, and they must disagree. But again, the Gemara rejects this. The Olam Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Now this is going to be harder to reject. Well, no, they come up with a plan. Umi savar to adre mezamna lizmina. All along, we've been saying, I'm the one who invited you. And that's the case that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said. I invited you, and I said, if you don't come to my house, you will be forbidden with a neder, right, to benefit from me. In this case, they say, who says that that's the case of this nidrei onsim? Never said who said. It said, hidiro chavero sheyochal etzlo. Not exactly clear. Okay, that means he made a vow on his friend that he will eat by him. There's a lot of he's there, who, right, no clear modifiers. Maybe they say, lo, dizmina adre lemizamna. It's the you, who is the guest, the invited person, took the vow to me. So you basically said, da amarle. Okay, so you said to me, mizamale lesudatech, will you invite me to a meal at your house? Okay, in this case, they're basically saying, nidrei onsim is a totally different scenario. Instead of me inviting you for Shabbat lunch, you say to me, will you invite me for Shabbat lunch? And I say, I say, sure, you can come for Shabbat lunch. And then you say, neder ze'alecha. Okay, you're going to take a vow. I'm going to take a vow about this, basically. We're going to vow. I want to make sure that you're not going to rescind the invitation. Vinadal. And then you took a neder, that basically saying, if you don't let me go for Shabbat lunch, then all of your possessions will be forbidden to me, or maybe all your possessions will be forbidden to me, right? In other words, it doesn't really matter. But you take a neder on me not allowing you to come to your house. And then the chalahu o shechala beno shikvo nahal harei elu nidrei onasim. In other words, the neder is that you're going to come to my house. And if you don't come to my house, the neder will kick in. But in the end, you didn't come to my house because of something else. But you're the one who took the vow and not me. Now, so then it's two totally different scenarios. One is, I want you to come to me, so I make this neder. That, says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that's a nidrei zeruzin. But if you take the neder to basically ensure that you're going to be able to come to my house, that's a different story. That's a real neder, okay? In which case, you can't say, oh, it's clearly the rabbis. So we tried these 3 sources, and each time we basically explained that it's not exactly as you thought from the beginning. Case is either a little different, or the case has more to it than you see, and either which way, the way we explain it is, even Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov theoretically could hold. In other words, we're not saying 100%, but we're saying it's not clear that the rabbis disagree. So we do many times, we bring a source, we suggest a possible explanation, which is all we need to basically say, you can't say otherwise, right? We're trying to prove definitively that the rabbis disagree. It's very likely that the rabbis do disagree in these cases, and this is the rabbi's position. But since it's possible, it's Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, we haven't come to answer our question. To answer the question, we have to be sure about it, and you can't be sure that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov wouldn't agree with these cases because, as the Gemara had suggested, you could read the case like this, and you could say that it's not what you thought originally. Okay. To which the Gemara brings source number 4. Here we get to a braita. Tashma yeter alken amar Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Okay, this seems to be a braita that's relating to our Mishnah because it's saying, and in addition, in other words, in addition to the case Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says in the Mishnah, there's another case where Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov also thinks that it's a neder zeruzin. Ha'omer l'chavero, konam she'ani nehenelach. It will be forbidden to me to benefit from you in a neder, konam. Im I ata mitareach etzli v'tochal imi pat chama v'tishtei mi kos chamim. If you don't come to my house to be a guest and eat with me some warm bread and drink with me some more hot water, v'hala hikpi kenegdo, and you say absolutely not, there's no way I'm coming to your house. Af elu nidre zeruzin. Okay, this is nidre zeruzin. Now that, right, so braita is saying, clearly, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says this case as well, which is very similar. It's just the reverse direction. Instead of me saying, you're going to be forbidden to me, I'm saying, if you don't eat by me, I won't never eat by you, basically, right? I'll forbid myself to you to benefit from you. But here comes the key words, velo hodulo chachamim. The rabbis did not agree with him, to which the Gemara says, now, since the braita relates, number one, to this new case, but it also is adding it to the previous case, there's two possibilities. Either the rabbis didn't agree specifically with this case, or the rabbis didn't agree to both cases. And the Gemara assumes, lohodulo chachamim. What does it mean, lohodulo chachamim? And from here, we're going to move to Amud Bet. Lav afilu b'kamaita. Don't you think it's also the first case? In other words, if the rabbis didn't agree with this one, we're assuming they didn't agree with either one. And what do you see from here? Shmamina, plige Rabbanan Abaye. You see that the rabbis disagree. The rabbis don't think that this is a case of neder zeruzin. They view this as an actually real vow. And if you said this vow, either you don't come eat with me, you'll be forbidden to me, or if you don't come eat with me, I will be forbidden to you. Either which way, that's an actual vow according to the rabbis. Only Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, that's not a real vow. You're just trying to convince your friend to come. And you just said it in that language, but you didn't really mean it. Right? Again, you meant it just for zeruzin, right? And that is not a vow. So what do we see here? Shmamina, we end up concluding the rabbis disagree. So that answered question number 1. Do the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov or not? And in the end, we prove from this final source that they do disagree. In the other 3 sources, maybe, but we just don't know. My havai. So now we have to answer question number 2, which is now that we say they disagree, who do we hold like? Tashma, let's learn it from here. Ta'amar, again, Tashma is always bringing in some outside quote. Okay, in the first 4 cases, we introduced each one with Tashma, and it was Tanaitic sources. This time it's going to be something an Amora said that we're just kind of quoting and saying, oh, look, we found he said this, and they're bringing it here. Now this will be Tashma like a copy paste. Okay, if it's somewhere there, we put it here. But it doesn't tell you, like Uriminu, for example, is if you're in a Mishna and it says Uriminu, right, you're relating to a Mishna or a Tanaitic source, it says Uriminu, you know they're going to bring you a Tanaitic source. Tashma could be anything. Ta'amar Rav Huna, halacha ke Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, v'chein amar Rav Bar Abba, halacha ke Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So we quote 2 amoraim, who basically say the halacha like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. In the end, we hold this is also called a neder zeruzin. Now we're getting to a new Mishnah, category number 2 of our 4 Nedarim of our chapter. Nidre havai. Okay, these are meaningless vows. What does that mean? We're going to have 2 examples, and the Ran is going to basically categorize them and explain that they're actually different from each other in an important manner. We'll see in a minute. Amar konam im lo ra'iti baderech hazeh ka'olei Mitzrayim. You're at a demonstration, okay? And then you say, I vow, right, that, I don't know, these fruits will be forbidden to me if I didn't see 600,000 people like the amount of people that came out of Egypt, okay? Now, this is called a neder havai. Why is it a neder havai? So, in other words, did you really see 600,000 people? No. Are you forbidden to those fruits because you didn't really see 600,000 people? No, you're not. Why not? Okay, think about it. When you go to a rally, you know, there's a ton of people there. say, wow, there were 1 million people there, right? You don't really mean 1 million people. How many times do you say 1 million and you don't really mean 1 million? That's just the way people speak, even in the language of a vow. You were just exaggerating. You were trying to say there were a ton of people there, okay? So now, even a ton, right, comes from a ton. It's an exaggerated word. So that's really what you meant to say. And therefore, so the Ran says, this is very important, because this is, okay, he says, this is guzma. This is exaggeration. You're basically exaggerating. Now, there's two possibilities. What there was, either you really were at a rally and there were really a lot of people. And then you basically, it's not that you said nothing. You were basically, we understand your statement as meaning not 600,000 like the amount of people that got out of Egypt. What you meant to say was there were a lot of people there. So if there really were a lot of people there, then your neder isn't a neder, because you basically were saying this is a neder if I didn't see a lot of people. So basically, even though you didn't see 600,000, your neder still doesn't click into effect because you did see a lot of people. Only if you really saw nobody and you were totally, saying this, and you really saw no one or very few people, there were 100 people there, let's say, and that's again, you'd have to see where you draw the line. But then says the Ran, this actually will be a neder. You'll be forbidden to eat whatever you forbade because you really didn't see a lot of people. It's not that it's not a neder at all. It's that we assume when you said ke'olei mitzrayim that you meant a lot of people. Okay, and then if there were a lot of people there, then your neder won't click in, because again, what did you say? This will be forbidden if I didn't see. And you did see, so it's fine. If for whatever reason you really saw no people, and for whatever reason you said this anyway, then really you'll be forbidden. That's going to be different from this next one. Second one is im lo ra'iti nachash kekorat beit habat. Now the simple understanding is I didn't see a snake like the beam of an olive press. And the beam of the olive press was what they would turn around, and it was attached to a stone, and that would crush the olives, and from that they would get the olive oil. Now, the assumption of the Gemara, we're going to get to this in tomorrow's daf, which is, assumption of the Gemara is it must be a gigantic snake, like the beam, the size of a beam. And then they basically say there are snakes that size, so that's not a ridiculous thing to say, and it has to be a ridiculous statement, right? Like, I saw 600,000 people. Nobody sees 600,000 people, right? Now, so the Gemara in the end is going to say, I'm kind of giving away the end tomorrow, but the Gemara is going to say we're talking about notches, or like these, it had a notched back, okay, little notches in its back. And that's what you meant to say, which doesn't exist at all. Now that's different. The first was exaggeration. The second is just not true. Now, sometimes you try, right? People are gullible. You try to convince them of ridiculous things. You make something up that's totally not true. So that, if you take a neder saying, I vow that this is going to be forbidden to me, if I didn't see this absurd thing that doesn't exist in the world at all, that's just not a vow. Because we know that you were just saying ridiculous things and you were just playing around or trying to convince people to be gullible. I don't know why you were doing it, but it basically is a meaningless statement. So while the second one is totally meaningless, the first one is meaningful. It's just you're totally exaggerating, and obviously it will be true even if there were, let's say, 5,000 people there. That's enough to say that you exaggerated and said 600,000, okay? So they're both cases where we're basically going to say your neder is not a neder, but there's a minor distinction between them, which is the first one we assume means you saw a lot of people. If you didn't see a lot of people, then your neder will kick in. So now the Gemara says, and this creates a lot of confusion because there's a girsa problem here, and a serious girsa problem, right? Girsa is the language used and what the word was. Tana, the Gemara brings a braita that says, nidrei havai mutarim, shvuot havai asurim. But the Ran in many commentaries change it to shvuot havai mutarim. Okay, so we have a big debate here whether this means that just like nidrei havai are meaningless, right, and don't count, likewise shvuot havai are also permitted. Okay, meaning, well, now we have to see what is a shvuot havai, and then what does it mean it's permitted, or what does it mean it's asur, according to those who think it's asur. We're going to read this sugya like the Ran, that it really means it's permitted, but I will say that if you say it's asur, what they really mean to say is in shvuah we have a different issue, which is the shvuat shav. You're not allowed to take an oath for no reason. So if you said, I swear I saw a nachash like the korat beit habad, well, you're lying. That's a shvuat shav, okay? Or shvuat sheker, right? There's a either meaningless or a lie, okay? but most of them think it's meaningless because everybody knows you didn't really see that. So you're just saying something meaningless, and that usually you're liable for. But we're going to go with the Ran, that it means Shvuot havai mutarin, and now the Gemara is going to have to explain what is Shvuot havai. So this entire sugya you can read in two different ways, depending on whether you think it's itself or the opposite, right? So it's always confusing when you have a sugya like that. What would be a case of Shvuot havai? Okay, we're going to try to, instead of the word konam, plug in the word shvuah. So instead of saying konam, im lo ra'iti baderech hazeh kolei mitzrayim, you would say shvuah im lo ra'iti baderech hazeh. Well, if you say that, I swear if I didn't see on this path, midaim kamar, this is nothing. You said nothing, basically. What is a shvuah? Shvuah is, I swear I saw something. You didn't swear if I didn't see something, you're missing. Either you say, I swear on something if I didn't see this, or I swear I didn't see something, right? It doesn't make sense to say, I swear if I didn't see something, that's nothing, right? It doesn't mean anything. So we're going to have Abaye and Rava each with a different explanation. Abaye amal, da'amal, shvuah shera'iti. Abaye says, you say, I swear that I saw. And then that's a regular swear, right? You could say, I swear that I ate something. I swear that I, right? That's an oath. So you can say, if a shvuat havai would be, I swear I saw 600,000 people. I swear I saw a snake like the beam of the olive press. I'll explain right in tomorrow's daf how we get to this ridge notched and what that has to do with an olive press, but that's tomorrow. So now, Rava says, that can't possibly be. What do we need to say this for? It's obvious. Okay, now what's obvious? So it also depends on what you think. Either if you're saying, by the way, the other version that it's a shvuat chav, of course that's a shvuat chav. If you're lying and under oath, that would be a shvuat chav. According to the Ran, who thinks it's actually mutar, permitted. So let's look at the Ran, 3 lines from the bottom. Im ken lama li lemeimar, klomar, di'i amidi d'shayach beguzma b'lechud kai. If you're talking about an exaggeration, and you say, I swear I saw 600,000 people, pshita d'shvuot nami mutarot, that's no different than a neder. Of course that would be permitted. You wouldn't even need to tell us this, because you're basically saying, I swear I saw 600,000 people. I was at this rally. I swear I saw that, which really just means I swear there were a lot of people there, and it's not a shvuat chav because it's true. Okay, that's not, you don't need us to tell you that, right? Because it says at the end of the round there, kushta kamar, kushta is truth. We were basically saying the truth. That was a real shvuah because you were basically saying there were a lot of people there. And you just use this language of exaggeration. So you don't need to tell us that, it's obvious. And furthermore, he says, I'd agree with you because va'od, jumia de neder katani. It would have to be like a neder. Now, what's the problem? What does it mean like a neder? Well, in neder, we brought 2 examples. And if we go back to the Ran, we said there's 2 different ones. The one we explained right now is guzma, right? It's an exaggeration. So that's why we would say it's permitted because you really were just exaggerating, but it's really true. So even though Rava says that's obvious, you don't need to tell us, but it would be obvious why, at least it is mutar. But if you say, I swear I saw a nachash, like the korat beit habad, which doesn't even exist, that's a false oath, right? You can't say, I swear, maybe a neder, these fruits will be forbidden to me if I do this, if I saw it, but that's different. That's a neder. That's not, you can't, that's saying, if that's true, which is not true, right? This is forbidden. And we basically say, you really didn't even mean your whole statement. But a shvuah, how can you say you didn't mean your shvuah? You lied. You said, I swear I saw this, and you didn't see it. You don't use oaths like that. So it doesn't apply. We have to, when the braita said, Nedarim, shvuot are like Nedarim, it means they're like them across the board, both these scenarios. So basically, it can't be that that's the case. So therefore, Ela Amarava, Be'omel, it must be the case of a shvuat havai that the braita is referring to is where you said, Ye asru perot ha'olam alai b'shvuah, and now you're making it really like a neder. These fruits will be forbidden to me, but not with a konam, with a neder, but with an oath. It's just a different language. It'll be forbidden to me, these fruits, by an oath. Im lo ra'iti baderech hazeh ka'olei mitzrayim. And now, we're basically, and you can fill in the nachash to that as well. Because then you're not lying and saying, I saw a nachash. You're saying, if I didn't see a nachash, then I swear these fruits will be forbidden on me. And then we put the swearing on the other part and not on this part. Okay? So let's just go through. Okay, what would happen if I say, I swear these fruits are forbidden to me if this? So if I didn't see 600,000 people, so basically, assuming I saw a lot of people, the fruits won't be forbidden because that's a fulfillment of, it was just exaggeration. If it's the snake, okay, so now this gets a little tricky. If either you say, I really didn't mean for it to be a shvuah, I'm just trying to convince people, right? So it seems that the fruits would not be forbidden to me, okay? The question is, though, is it considered a shvuat shav? That's already questionable. You might actually, the fruits might be permitted, but because you were kind of using the language of oath about this, maybe you would actually be liable for shvuat shav. So that's questionable. Now comes the funny question of today's daf. Well, this will kind of finish our daf. Left with a funny line. Ravina le Ravashi. Why are we calling this a shvuat havai? If you say, right, whether it's a shvuah, I guess he's really talking about shvuah because you'll see in the continuation. If you say, these fruits will be forbidden to me by an oath, right? If I didn't see ko'olei mitzrayim, and we basically say, it doesn't have to be that you have to go count and see where they're really 600,000, but really we can just assume that Tanai was fulfilled. But and we call it a shvuat havai or a neder havai. Maybe it's a real neder. Dilma hai gavra. Now notice what it didn't say there. It said in the Mishna, or in the, however we read this case, whether we read in the Mishna or how we applied it to oaths. It never says humans, okay? It says, I vow that I didn't see on this road like those who came out of Egypt, okay? Like the people who came out of Egypt. Now, the people who came out of Egypt is 600,000. So comes Ravina the Ravashi, and he says, maybe what he meant was, maybe he saw an ant farm, okay? He saw a nest of ants, and there were 600,000 of them. In other words, he tries to come up with some creative explanation where you can be comparing the ants to the Olei Mitzrayim. You won't believe how many I saw. He didn't say how many what I saw. Maybe he meant how many ants I saw. I saw a huge ant farm. There were 600,000 of them. Maybe that's what he meant. No, he didn't say ants, but maybe that was what he meant. So we could come to us and say, yeah, this was a net, right? We could say maybe this was really an oath. And then we have to see were there really 600,000 there and is it true or not? And he just called them like those who got out of Egypt. Okay? And then it's actually a real oath. Okay? That's his question. So this is going to lead us into a whole discussion in tomorrow's talk. When people take oaths, do they use language that's common to everybody? If you say Kolei Mitzrayim, the average person will mean to be referring to humans. Or can we say that a person takes an oath specifically about, right, what they particularly mean? And we saw this with neder, right? That neder often you could say, oh, that's what I meant, even though maybe nobody else means this. Question is, when you take an oath, is it possible, right? Since oaths are very serious, maybe you really only use the language that's normally, right, that everybody else uses. And a person wouldn't necessarily take an oath with something in some unique way because you get yourself into trouble. Like what you usually just go an oath with the normal. Or do we say that maybe, maybe people, you can possibly, there's a possibility that someone took an oath in a unique manner, and then we have to explain the oath in that unique manner. So that's a question the Gemara is going to question and see, is that really possible or not? Okay, so we'll get to that in tomorrow's daf. Wishing everybody a Shabbat Shalom.